Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to admit, when I first opened the stack of research for today, I genuinely thought I had accidentally, pulled up a script for a sci-fi movie.
Right, the terminology is pretty intense.
It really is. I'm seeing terms like zombie apocalypse, secret nomads, the necropolis, and the third heaven. It felt very, well, very Hollywood. But then I started actually reading the source material.
And you realize it's not fiction at all.
Exactly. These are incredibly deep theological and etymological studies, and it's actually presented as a survival manual.
It is, and it's a fascinating one at that. It's definitely not your standard self-help book or a typical Sunday sermon series.
Yeah.
The material we're covering today essentially argues that the world we live in, this modern, hyper-connected, consumer-driven world, is functionally a graveyard.
Wow.
And if you want to survive it with your soul intact, you can't just be a nice person. You have to become something else entirely.
Right, and that's where we get this term zombie apocalypse. Now, usually when I hear that, I'm thinking strictly pop culture. Walking Dead, people eating brains. But the sources here use it as a very specific spiritual diagnostic.
They aren't saying people are literal rotting flesh,
No,
obviously.
of course not. So help me bridge that gap. What does this actually mean in the context of these studies?
It really comes down to a distinction in ancient languages between two different types of life. In English, we just have the word life. You're alive, I'm alive, the plant on your desk is alive.
Right, it's a catch-all term.
Exactly. But the Greek and Hebrew distinctions are much sharper. First, you have nephesh. In Hebrew, this is the living soul. It's biological life. It's the engine that keeps your heart beating, your lungs breathing, and, well, your appetite hungry.
So if you have nefesh, you are functionally, biologically animated.
Yes.
Okay, so nefesh is the baseline. It's survival mode. Eat, sleep, reproduce, maybe scroll on social media.
That's it. It's the animal soul. But then, the New Testament introduces this Greek concept of Zoe. And Zoe isn't just biology. It refers to the uncreated, indestructible life of God. It's a completely different frequency of existence.
A different frequency. I like that.
So when the sources talk about a zombie apocalypse, they are describing a world full of people who are running entirely on nephesh. They are biologically active, they are going to work, they are buying coffee, they are arguing online, but they are spiritually extinguished. They lack Zoe.
That is actually kind of terrifying when you frame it that way. It's the idea that you can be walking around looking totally normal, but the lights are out inside.
Precisely. The source material described it as the walking dead burying their own dead. They are driven purely by appetite, by reaction to their environment, by the hive mind of the culture.
So there's no internal sovereign source of life.
Right. There's no Zoe. They're just echoing the noise around them.
And this is where the survival manual part comes in. Because if everyone else is a zombie in this metaphorical sense, then there has to be a group that isn't. The sources call them the remnant, but I really like this other term they use.
The secret nomad.
The secret nomad. It sounds like a spy thriller character. Who is this person?
The nomad is the exact antithesis of the zombie. The zombie is defined by their environment. They want what everyone else wants. They fear what everyone else fears. But the nomad is defined by a connection to a completely different reality.
The sources call them friends of Yeshua, right? Using the Hebrew name for Jesus.
Yes, they operate in the physical world, but are tethered to the third heaven.
We are definitely going to have to unpack that third heaven concept later because that sounds wild. But essentially, you're saying they're walking in two worlds at once.
That is the absolute core of it. They walk in the necropolis, the city of the dead, which is just a metaphor for our current society, but they are breathing the air of a different kingdom.
So they're physically here, but sourcing their life from somewhere else.
Exactly. They heal, they bring peace, they shift the atmosphere of a room when they walk in, but they do it quietly. They aren't trying to build a brand or a platform. They are building a spiritual structure that is invisible to the naked eye.
So our mission today is to figure out exactly how that works for you, the listener. We're looking at what the notes call the etymology of eschatology, which is quite a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. Eschatology usually means the study of the end times. But here we aren't talking about dates on a calendar or predicting when an asteroid hits. We are talking about the telos, the ultimate aim of the human spirit.
Basically, how do you live at the end of the age right now on a normal Tuesday?
Exactly. And the toolkit we have to work with is pretty diverse. We've got ancient Hebrew letter mysticism. We've got what looks like physics-defying logistics of the biblical desert. And we're going to talk about fasting.
And I really want to be clear for you listening, not fasting like trying to lose 5 pounds for summer.
No, definitely not.
Hmm.
We are talking about fasting as high-level spiritual warfare.
Which brings me to a thought that struck me while reading the intro. There's this idea that the instructions given to the apostles take no bag, no money, no extra staff, might not have been symbolic.
Right.
What if they were literal technical instructions,
Mhm.
like a literal blueprint for accessing a different kind of power source?
That is the provocative question driving this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
Is the cost of discipleship, giving up your stuff, your security, your comfort, actually the purchase price for a superior form of physics?
Let's dig into that, because the sources start with this concept of the great forsaking, and honestly, it sounds miserable at first glance.
It absolutely does. If you value comfort above everything else, it anchors on this really famous line from Matthew 8:20. A scribe comes to Jesus all excited and says, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go."
And Jesus shuts him down.
Well, he gives this very stark reply. He says, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head."
I've heard that verse 1,000 times. Usually the takeaway is just, Jesus was poor, and that's sad or humble.
Right, that's the standard reading. But look at the etymology and the context the researcher provides here. This isn't a lament. He's not complaining about being homeless.
He's stating a requirement.
Yes, he's establishing the nomad requirement. Think about the foxes and the birds. What do holes and nests actually represent?
Safety. Home. A predictable place to sleep.
Security, predictability, total integration into the biological order. Foxes have dens to hide from predators. Birds have nests to raise their young safely. They have a place in the horizontal world.
So what is Jesus actually saying to the scribe then?
He's saying, if you want to operate as the Son of Man, if you want to access Zoe life, you have to step outside of that biological safety system.
You have to forsake the nest. That goes against literally every biological instinct we have. We spend our whole lives trying to build a better nest. Bigger house, bigger retirement fund, better insurance.
Exactly. We are hardwired for nephesh preservation. But the nomad is wired for something else. This connects back to the ancient paths mentioned in the text, specifically Abraham. His call was lich lecha.
Leechly. Go forth.
Literally, go for yourself or go to yourself. God tells him to leave his country, his kindred, his father's house. Leave your identity, your support network, your inheritance.
And go where? It's
Got
not
it.
like he got a map.
That's the kicker. God says, to the land that I will show you, not to the land at these specific coordinates. The destination wasn't a place on a map.
The destination was a relationship.
Yes, he had to follow the voice. The source makes a really beautiful point here. For the nomad, the destination is God. It's not a geographical location. The security comes from the proximity to the voice, not the thickness of the walls of your house.
There is also a major section on Paul here, and I think most people think of Paul as the theologian, the guy who wrote the letters, but the notes focus heavily on his divestment.
Paul is the ultimate case study in this exchange. Before he was an apostle, he was Saul. He had major status. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees.
Did the ultimate nest.
He really did. He had the respect, the pedigree, the religious authority. And he says in his letters that he traded all of he actually calls it skubalon in Greek.
That's not a polite word, right?
It's pretty graphic, actually. It means refuse, dung, or garbage. He says, I count all that status as dung. He traded it to be shipwrecked, beaten, homeless, and eventually executed.
From a nephesh perspective, from a zombie perspective, that is the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals.
Exactly. Give up your mansion to get beaten up. Why would anyone do that?
Because he found a better bread.
Yes. He accessed a reality that the Pharisaic status couldn't give him. He realized that the nest was actually a cage that kept him from seeing the third heaven. And this brings us to what the notes call the supernatural logistics of the desert. This is where the physics start to get really weird.
Okay, yes. This part blew my mind. Deuteronomy 29.5, the 40-year wardrobe.
It's a detail we almost always gloss over. Moses is talking to the Israelites after 40 years of wandering in a brutal, unforgiving desert. And he says, I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes have not worn out on you, and your sandals have not worn off your feet.
Just pause on that for a second. Think about the physics of that for you listening. If you wear a pair of sneakers every day, they last maybe 6 months before the tread is totally gone, hiking in sharp rocks. Maybe 3 months.
Right. In our world, the world of the zombie apocalypse, everything is governed by entropy. Things fall apart. You buy a shirt, it fades. You drive a car, it rusts. It is the absolute law of lack and decay.
But the source argues that in the desert, when you are on the Father's business, entropy is suspended.
Suspended.
Like completely paused.
It's called the harvest economy.
Yeah.
The idea is that when you are walking in the direct will of God, when you are a nomad following the pillar of cloud and fire, the physical laws of wear and tear just do not apply in the same way.
So the clothes didn't wear out because they were infused with the same Zoe life that was sustaining the people.
That's the argument. It changes how you view the poverty of the apostles. It wasn't that they were starving and miserable. It was that they were traveling light enough to float on this supernatural current.
They didn't need a backup plan because the atmosphere they walked in was self-sustaining.
Exactly.
Speaking of building things or not building things, we really have to talk about the master builder. Because there is a massive section in our notes about the identity of Jesus that completely flips the script on the Sunday school image I grew up with.
You mean the carpenter versus the tekton?
Yes. I mean, every picture I've ever seen of Jesus in a workshop, he's holding a saw, there are wood shavings everywhere, maybe he's making a wooden table, but the sources are saying, hold on, look at the geography.
Right. This is a brilliant example of how translation shapes our entire imagination. The Greek word used in the Gospels to describe Jesus' trade is tekton. Now, tekton is a general term for a craftsman, a builder, or an artisan.
But when the Bible was translated into English and German and other European languages,
It was done by people living in Europe.
where there are forests literally everywhere.
Exactly. In Europe, if you build a house, you build it out of wood, so tekton became carpenter. But if you go to first century Galilee, look at the landscape. It's not a forest. It's rocky. It's almost entirely limestone.
So houses weren't made of wood at all.
Timber was a luxury item. It was rare, expensive, and used mostly just for roof beams or doors. The actual structure of a house, the walls, the foundations, the cisterns, the courtyards, that was all stone.
So logically, a tekton in Galilee would be a stonemason.
The stonemason argument is historically very strong. But where it gets truly fascinating and where it hits our theme of the nomad is when you look at the theology. Look at Jesus' metaphors.
If he was a wood carpenter, you'd expect him to talk about joining wood or sanding or the grain of a tree.
But he talks about stones. Constantly.
The wise man builds his house on the rock.
Yes. Which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost? He talks about foundations. He talks about the stone which the builders rejected.
Whoa. Okay, let's unpack that one. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. If Jesus is a stonemason, that's not just a religious quote. That's a work story.
It becomes deeply autobiographical. Imagine a stonemason working on a large project. He shapes a stone. He brings it to the site. The builders, the foremen, or in this metaphor, the religious leaders, they look at it. They inspect it.
And they say, this doesn't fit our specs. It's too rough. It's the wrong shape.
So they toss it on the scrap heap. They reject it entirely.
But the stonemason knows something they don't.
He knows that the rejected stone is actually the Rosh Pina, the head of the corner, the keystone, the absolute most important stone that holds the entire arch together.
That is profound. It shifts the whole image for me. He isn't building wooden furniture for people to sit on. He's building a spiritual temple, a house made of living stones.
And that connects perfectly back to the nomad. The nomad isn't building a physical nest because they are part of this moving, living architecture that the master stonemason is actively assembling.
The house isn't a building. It's a network of people, living stones, connected by the spirit.
Precisely.
So if we are going to be part of this living house, we have to operate by its rules. And this brings us to the next part of the survival manual. Because if you want to be a living stone, you apparently have to do some intense maintenance.
The source material takes a hard right turn here into something that, frankly, scares most modern people.
Fasting.
Fasting.
Yeah. And not just skipping lunch. The notes call this the physics of authority, and they frame fasting in a way I have never heard before. They call it starving the zombie virus.
This is a critical reframe. Most of us, if we're really honest, think of fasting as a religious chore. It's something you do to show God you're serious, or maybe to punish yourself a little bit.
Right. It feels transactional. I'm going to be miserable so God will answer my prayer. Suffering for points.
The sources say absolutely not. That is completely missing the point. Fasting isn't about suffering. It's about autophagy for the soul.
Okay, I know autophagy is a massive buzzword in the health world right now. It basically means self-eating, right?
Yes. Biologically, when you stop eating for a certain period, your body runs out of external fuel, so it starts looking for fuel inside. But it's smart. It doesn't eat the good stuff first. It hunts down the damaged cells, the senescent cells, the junk proteins, and it recycles them.
It cleans house, it takes out the trash.
Exactly. The source suggests that spiritual fasting does the exact same thing for the human spirit. It clears the seals, specifically the glandular system, so that spiritual vision becomes possible.
The Desert Fathers.
Yes, these early Christian mystics who lived in the Egyptian desert, they had a saying: digestion consumes the energy required for vision.
That is a fascinating sentence. Digestion consumes the energy required for vision. So the idea is, if I'm constantly processing a cheeseburger, I don't have the metabolic bandwidth to see into the spiritual realm.
That's the theory. To see the third heaven, you have to quiet the noise of the first heaven, which is the body's constant screaming demand for fuel and dopamine. You have to shut down the Nefesh engine so the Zoe engine can spin up.
The notes mention something called the Black Fast. That sounds intense. Is that like coffee and water only?
I wish. No, the Black Fast was the standard for early Christians during Lent and other holy periods. It meant one meal a day, eaten strictly after sunset. And it was xerophagy, which means dry eating.
Dry eating.
Bread, salt, water, maybe some bitter herbs, no meat, no dairy, no oil, no wine.
Wow. That makes my no sugar January look pretty weak. But again, why? Was it just to be as tough as possible?
No, it connects to the Kabbalistic sphere of Netzach. In Hebrew mysticism, the tree of life has different spheres representing different attributes of God. Netzach means victory, endurance, or eternity.
Okay.
The idea is that fasting is the soil in which Imuna faith grows.
How does not eating build faith, though?
Because you are proving to your own nervous system, not just your mind, but your actual physical body, that you are sustained by the Word of God, not just by bread. You are silencing the mother of all passions, which is the belly.
The belly is the loudest voice in the human system. It screams, I need, constantly.
Yes. And when you silence that, the spirit can finally speak.
There is a legend about St. Christopher in the notes that ties into this so perfectly. Now, I always thought St. Christopher was just the guy on the little medals that surfers and travelers wear. I didn't know there was a deep theology there.
The archetype of Christopher is really powerful. The legend says he was a giant, a massive man, fearsome. He wanted to serve the greatest king in the world. He eventually finds a Christian hermit who tells him, if you want to serve Christ, you must fast and pray.
And the giant says,
He says that I can't. Look at me, I'm huge. If I stop eating, I'll literally starve to death. I can't do the fasting thing.
honestly, very relatable.
Right. So the hermit gives him a completely different task. He says, okay, if you can't fast from food, you must fast from yourself through service. Go to the river. The current is incredibly strong and people drown trying to cross it. Your job is to carry them across on your shoulders.
So service becomes his fast.
Exactly. He spends years doing this.
Yeah.
Then one night, a small child asked to be carried across. Christopher puts the child on his shoulder. He grabs a staff, which is just a big dead stick, and starts walking.
But as he gets into the river,
The child starts to get heavy,
impossibly heavy.
unbearably heavy. The water is rising, the current is smashing against him, and this child feels like he weighs as much as a mountain. Christopher is almost crushed. He barely makes it to the other bank.
Mm.
When he puts the child down, he asks, "Who are you?
Yeah.
You weighed more than the whole world."
And the child says,
"I am Christ the King. You are carrying the weight of the world because you are carrying me, and I made the world." But here is the eschatology part. Christopher carried the Malkut, the kingdom. He couldn't fast from food, so he had to fast from his own ego by bearing the immense burden of others.
and the sign of his victory. When he planted his staff in the ground the next morning, that dead stick had bloomed. It had flowers and fruit.
That's the resurrection life. That's Zoe overtaking the dead wood.
Whether through the black fast or through the burden of service, the nomad has to learn to carry the weight of the kingdom. And you can't do that if you are weighed down by the second master.
That brings us to Matthew 6.24. No one can serve two masters, God and Mammon.
This is a crucial definition. We usually think mammon just means money, like being rich is bad. But the etymology goes so much deeper.
Mammon is the spirit of material security. It's the anxiety of, do I have enough? You can be completely poor and still serve Mammon because you are obsessed with what you lack.
The notes break down the Greek word for worry here, merimnao. I really love this breakdown.
It's a massive light bulb moment. Merimnao is the exact word Jesus uses when he says, do not worry. It literally translates to be pulled apart or to be divided.
Being divided, that's the exact opposite of the single eye that the scriptures talk about.
Precisely. Fasting gathers you. Worry scatters you. When you worry, think about how it feels physically. Your mind is out in the future, your regret is stuck in the past, and your body is in the present. You are completely fragmented.
Pulled apart.
The nomad mimics the birds of the air, not because they're careless, but because they are perfectly focused. They don't have a divided mind worrying about building barns. They have a biological trust in the source.
So fasting is the tool to reintegrate that divided self, to pull yourself back together so you can actually be effective in the world.
Yes. And once you are gathered, once the static of the belly and the anxiety of mammon is cleared out, you can start to engage with what the notes call the architecture of the word. This is where we get into the code of the universe.
This is section 3 in our outline. And I have to say, this is where I felt like I was learning an entirely new language. The notes dive into Hebrew mysticism, specifically the letters and the breath.
It connects directly to what we just discussed. If fasting clears the hardware, this is installing the software. In Hebrew thought, the soul isn't just a monolith. We talked about nephesh, the lower soul, the appetite. But then you have ruach.
Ruach means spirit, right?
It means spirit, but it also literally means wind or breath. God breathes into Adam and he becomes a living soul. The connection between breath and spirit is absolute.
The notes suggest a practice called the breath prayer. Is this just like mindfulness or yoga?
It's similar in the mechanics of breathing, but vastly different in its aim. It's about syncing the internal frequency. You inhale the name, often the tetragrammaton, YHWH, or the name of Yeshua, and you exhale the heavy zombie energy. It's a way of manually tuning your internal radio.
But then we get to the Hebrew letters, and specifically the Urim and Thummim. I remember that phrase from the Old Testament. It was part of the high priest's outfit, right?
Yes. The high priest wore a breastplate set with 12 stones. And tradition says the Urim and Thummim were a way God communicated directly. Urim means lights. Thummim means perfections or completeness.
How did it actually work? Did they just glow?
The mystical tradition suggests that the letters engraved on the stones would actually light up to spell out answers. It was the divine interface. But the source argues that for the modern nomad, you don't need a physical breastplate.
The Jesus prayer, or the meditation on the Hebrew letters, acts as your internal Urim and Thummim.
Yes, it lights up the heart.
Let's get really specific here. There is a deep dive in the notes about the month of Adar and the letter Kuf. This felt very specific when I read it. Why does this matter to us?
The Hebrew calendar isn't just dates on a page. It's an energy map. Adar is the month associated with Pisces, the fish. It's the very last month of the Hebrew year, and the letter associated with it is Kuf.
I'm looking at a picture of Kuf right now. It looks like a needle, or maybe a monkey with a long tail.
Monkey is actually one of its meanings. But look at the shape of it on the line. It's the only letter in the entire Hebrew alphabet that descends below the line.
Huh.
All other letters stay on the baseline or go up. Kuf goes down.
Okay, so visually it digs deep.
It represents the unique ability to descend into the darkness, into the necropolis, into the chaos, below the line of respectability, to retrieve the sparks of holiness that are trapped down there. It is the definitive letter of the nomad.
That makes perfect sense. The nomad has to go where the zombies are to wake them up.
And the energy of Adar is holy mirth, laughter, the shak in Hebrew.
The notes mention the spleen here, which I always thought was just a useless organ you can live without.
In ancient physiology, the spleen was considered the absolute seat of black bile, melancholy, depression. But in Adar, through the power of this Kuf descent, that melancholy is completely transmuted into laughter.
The laughter of victory.
The laughter of reversal. Think of the story of Esther, which takes place in Adar. Haman builds a gallows to hang Mordecai. It's a dark, depressing situation. But in a sudden twist, Haman ends up hanging on his own gallows.
It's the great cosmic joke on evil.
Exactly. The nomad knows this joke. When they see darkness, they don't despair, they laugh, because they know the reversal is already coming.
There is a wild story about 22,000 children connected to this.
This is from the Midrash, the rabbinic commentary. When Haman issued his decree to wipe out the Jews, Mordecai didn't go build a fortress or sharpen swords. He gathered 22,000 children, and he taught them to pray. But more than that, they refused to eat or drink.
The children fasted.
Yes, and the text says their pure breath, their prayer coming from completely empty bellies, pierced the heavens, tore up the decree of death, and turned it into a victory. It's an archetype of the pure breath defeating the decree of death.
That is heavy. So how do we apply this today? The source material gives us a flashcard system for the soul, a 22-day cycle of breathing through these letters.
It's a powerful visualization technique. You take one letter a day, you look at it, you breathe it in, you meditate on its deep meaning. You are basically installing a new operating system in your mind.
Let's run through a few examples so you listening can try this. Let's start with Lef.
Aleph is the first letter. It has no sound of its own. It is the silent intake of breath before you even speak. It represents unity. the oneness of God before creation. So when you meditate on Aleph, you are finding that silent point of absolute unity inside yourself.
Okay, bet.
Bet means house or tent. The very first word of the Bible is Bereshit in the beginning, which starts with bet. It represents dwelling. The meditation is, Lord, make my body a house for your presence. You are building the internal temple.
Gimel.
Gimel is related to Gamal, camel. What does a camel do? It carries water through the blistering desert. It represents Gimelut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness. It's the ability to carry peace into a dry, hostile place.
Samek.
The pillar, or a support. Visually, it's a circle. It represents being upheld, trusting that you are held up by the structure of the universe so you don't have to desperately hold yourself up.
And let's do one more. Sadi.
Sadi looks like a hook. It refers to the Zadik, the righteous one, but the shape is literally like a fish hook. It's the hook that draws the soul upward, out of the chaotic waters of the world and into the pure air of God.
I love that. So the idea is you spend a day meditating on the hook, and it entirely rewires your perception of what's pulling on you.
Exactly. You are systematically replacing the hooks of advertising and anxiety with the hook of righteousness.
Which perfectly prepares you for the next level, because if you are going to walk as a nomad, fully hooked into God, you are walking into a war zone.
Hmm.
The zombie apocalypse doesn't like it when people wake up. We really need to map the unseen reality.
This is section 4, the cosmology of the three heavens. This is crucial because a lot of people try to fight spiritual battles using physical tools or vice versa. You need to know exactly where you are standing.
Break it down for us. First heaven.
The first heaven is the physical world, the atmosphere, the clouds, the streets you walk on, the necropolis. It's where your physical body is right now.
To second heaven.
This is the battlefields, the psychic realm, the prince of the power of the air. This is where the ideologies, the fears, the accusations, and the zombie virus signals are broadcast from. It's the realm of spiritual conflict.
And the third heaven?
Shammai Shamayim, the heaven of heavens, the throne room. This is the realm of pure presence where God is. It is completely above the conflict.
So where's the nomad in all this?
This is the strategic secret. The nomad's feet are in the first heaven. They're walking to the grocery store, filling their car with gas. But their consciousness, their spirit, is seated in the third heaven.
And the warfare happens in the second.
Yes. But here is the key to the whole thing. The nomad bypasses the second heaven. They don't fight fear with fear. They don't fight anger with anger. They pull the reality of the heaven, the peace, the healing, the absolute authority, and they bring it straight down into the first heaven. They collapse the middle realm.
That is a powerful image. You aren't fighting the zombies. You are bringing a cure from a much higher altitude.
Exactly. If you try to fight the devil in the second heaven, using your own willpower or anxiety, you will lose every time. He has way more experience there. But if you function from the third heaven, you are operating from the place of victory. That's Zach.
And to do that, you need authority. You need a badge. The notes talk extensively about the blue cords. They tackle it.
This connects back to our whip maker. Remember Jesus cleansing the temple? He makes a whip of cords.
Right.
The notes link this to the commandment in Numbers 15. God tells the Israelites to put tassels on the corners of their garments and to include a cord of blue.
Why blue specifically?
The dye, techelet, was sourced from a very specific snail, the Hexaplex trunculus. It was incredibly rare and expensive. In the ancient world, blue and purple were strictly the colors of royalty. Only kings and nobles could afford it.
So telling a bunch of ex-slaves wandering in the desert to wear royal blue
Was a massive, radical statement of identity. It was saying, you are a kingdom of priests. You are royalty.
The notes mention the snail dye has a fascinating chemical property. It changes color.
Yes. When the dye is first extracted, it's actually yellow. But when you expose it to direct sunlight, it transforms into a brilliant sapphire blue. It's a perfect picture of the nomad. When we are exposed to the sun, the light of God, our nature changes from earthly yellow to heavenly blue.
So the command to wear the cord wasn't just ancient fashion.
It was a vital cognitive trigger. The scripture says that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and not follow the lust of your own heart and your own eyes.
It's a physical reminder of authority.
It's even more than a reminder. It's a uniform. When you wear the blue cord metaphorically today, you are saying, I am under the authority of the third heaven. And because I am under authority, I can exercise authority.
The notes say, pick up the blue cords. That's the primary call to action here. It means rejecting the counterfeits.
Rejecting the lust of the eyes, the marketing, the envy, the magic of the consumer world, and walking in the true authority that casts out demons and heals the sick.
And this leads right to the greater works promise in John 14:12. The works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do. That has always sounded completely impossible to me. Greater than raising the dead, greater than walking on water.
The expert commentary here suggests greater refers to scope, not necessarily quality. Yeshua was one man in one geographic region. He could only physically be in one village at a time. But because he went to the Father, to the third heaven, he poured out the Spirit on the entire nomad network.
So now the body is global.
Exactly. The healing power is distributed. Instead of one stonemason in Galilee, you have millions of living stones all over the world, bringing third heaven reality into the first heaven simultaneously.
Yeah.
We are the extended nervous system of the king.
Okay, we have the theory, we have the cosmology, we have the history, but I really want to land the plane on section 5 for you, the daily protocol, because if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, this sounds great, but how do I actually do this tomorrow morning? The sources provide a praxis.
Yes, you need highly practical tools for the zombie apocalypse. You can't just wing it and hope for the best.
First up is the prayer of invisibility. This sounds like an actual superpower.
It's not about turning physically transparent, obviously. It's about being passed over by the systems of malice. The prayer is, let the eyes of the necropolis see only a shadow, while my spirit burns as a sun.
Explain how that works in practice.
In a world of surveillance capitalism, where literally everyone wants your attention, your data, and your outrage, the nomad chooses to be uncatchable. You don't cast your pearls before swine. You don't broadcast your spiritual location to the second heaven entities. You walk in profound humility. Humility acts as a spiritual cloaking device. If you aren't constantly trying to be famous or seen, the enemy often just ignores you.
Low profile, high impact.
Exactly.
Then there is identifying the person of peace. This comes straight from Luke 10.
When Jesus sent out the disciples, he gave them a specific protocol. When you enter a house, say peace to this house. If a son of peace is there, your peace will rest on him.
But how do you spot a son of peace in a modern crowd?
You look for resonance, eye contact,
Yeah.
a deep receptivity. The notes call them resonant souls. You feel a distinct lack of friction. The conversation flows deeper very quickly without forcing it.
And if it doesn't, the instruction is to shake the dust.
This is so often misunderstood as being petty or rude. Like, I'm shaking the dust off my feet at you. But the source argues it's purely physics, not judgment.
Physics.
If the connection isn't there, if there's hostility or just a completely dead frequency, don't force it. Don't try to smash down the door to convince them. Shake the dust means do not carry the heaviness of that rejection with you. Don't let the dust of the necropolis stick to your soul. Release it immediately and move on to where the soil is actually ready. Conserve your kingdom energy for where it will bear fruit.
We also have the midday fast.
This is a vital reset button. From sunrise to sunset, the world tries to encrust you with stress and demands. The midday fast, even if it's just stopping for 5 minutes to not eat, to not scroll on your phone, to just breathe, resets the Christos, the Christ center within. It keeps the single eye open during the absolute chaos of the workday.
And the arrow prayers. I really love this image.
The Desert Fathers lived by these. They dealt with constant mental attacks, what they called logismoi, intrusive thoughts, lust, anger, despair, you name it.
And the rule is you don't argue with them.
Never argue with a demon or a dark thought. You lose that debate. Instead, you shoot an arrow. Short, piercing prayers. Lord Jesus, help me. Lord, have mercy. God, come to my assistance.
Why arrows specifically?
Because they are incredibly fast. You don't need a 5-point theological treatise when you're under sudden attack. You need a weapon. The name of Jesus, shot like an arrow, pierces the thought bubble and pops it instantly.
Finally, the notes outline a 90-day rite of passage, a knight's apprenticeship. If you listening really want to commit to this lifestyle, here is the roadmap.
It breaks it down month by month. Month 1 is small fasts, establishing authority over the belly.
You can't command a demon if you can't command a sandwich.
It sounds funny, but is the absolute truth. If you are a slave to your impulse to grab a snack, you are a slave, period. You have to break the chain of appetite to establish any real sovereignty.
Month 2.
Breath practices, calming fear. Using the Aleph breath, that silent unity, to stabilize the nervous system. You train yourself so that when a crisis hits, your first reaction isn't sheer panic. It's a deep, anchoring breath.
And month 3.
The apostolic gaze. Looking at Jesus in the hard moments, it's training your core reflex. When trouble hits, when the unexpected bill comes, when the bad diagnosis comes, where do your eyes naturally go? Do they go straight to the problem, or do they go to the king?
It's essentially a boot camp for the soul.
It's preparation for the hardest.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today. from the physics of the desert to the blue chords to the arrow prayers. But we have to wrap this up with the final seal mentioned in the text.
The ultimate passcode of the prophet. Hine.
Hineni. What does it actually mean?
It translates roughly to, here I am. But it's not just about location. It's not, I'm over here in the kitchen. When God called Abraham, he said, Hineni. When he called Moses from the burning bush, Hineni. When he called Isaiah, Hineni.
It's a statement of total availability.
It means I am fully present, I am listening, I am yours, I am completely ready to be sent. It is the total surrender of the nomad. It is the statement that activates the entire mission. You can have all the knowledge, all the deep theology, but until you say Hineni, you are just a spectator.
The sources leave us with a challenge. The Whitmaker is in the house.
The time for playing religious games is over. The second master mammon, the spirit of anxiety and worldly security, has to go. The call is to walk out with nothing but the promise. I will show you the land.
It's scary. I'll be perfectly honest, it's scary.
It is terrifying to the nephesh. But remember the 40-year wardrobe. When you walk that path, the sandals don't wear out. The provision is there. The third heaven reality is infinitely stronger than the entropy of this world.
So the question for you listening and for me is, will you be the one who shakes the dust or the one who gathers it? But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. If the zombie virus we've been talking about is transmitted by the culture, the noise, the hive mind, what if it's also embedded in the very words we use every day? What if the ultimate fast isn't just from food, but a fast of silence? Imagine shutting off your words for a day to see what your spirit actually sounds like.
That is a profound challenge. The desert is blooming. The river is rising. The only question is, are you ready to say Hineni?
That's it for this deep dive. Keep your eyes on the blue chords, keep your arrows ready, and we'll see you in the third heaven. Or at least next week.
Walk in peace.